The old iron gates groaned like a dying animal as we pushed them open. Rust flaked off, staining our fingers a sickly orange. Moonlight filtered through the skeletal trees, casting long, distorted shadows across the overgrown path. We shouldn't have been there. We all felt it, a prickling unease that settled deep in our bones. But curiosity, that insatiable hunger for the unknown, had lured us in. The church loomed before us, a decaying silhouette against the night sky. Its windows were vacant eyes, staring out at us with a chilling indifference. Broken stained glass glittered on the ground like scattered jewels, reflecting the pale moonlight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, a smell that clung to the back of our throats. We were just kids, really. A group of friends, bored with the mundane, seeking a thrill. We'd heard the stories, the local legends whispered around campfires and late-night sleepovers. They said this place, this forgotten church, was a gateway. A conduit to something beyond our understanding. We never believed those stories, not really. We thought it was just a game, a harmless adventure. But as we stood there, at the threshold of that decaying sanctuary, a shiver ran down my spine. A premonition, perhaps. A warning. We should have turned back. We should have heeded the whispers of our fear. But we didn't. We crossed the threshold, and stepped into the darkness. And the darkness, it welcomed us. The inside of the church was worse than the outside. If that was even possible. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something ancient and vaguely unsettling. It felt like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting. We'd come prepared. Weeks of research, poring over old books and whispered rumors, had led us to this ritual. A ritual said to grant forbidden knowledge, to open a door to another realm. We'd gathered the necessary ingredients, herbs with names I couldn't pronounce, a tarnished silver chalice, and a piece of obsidian as black as the night itself. There were 4 of us. Sarah, always the adventurous one, eager to prove her bravery. Mark, the cynic, who claimed he was only there for the laugh, but whose trembling hands betrayed his true feelings. Emily, the quiet observer, her eyes filled with a strange mix of fascination and dread. And me. The one who had convinced them all to come. The one who would lead them into the darkness. We arranged the candles in a circle, just as the book instructed. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, distorting the already grotesque figures in the decaying murals. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a drumbeat against the silence of the ancient church. The obsidian was cold beneath my fingertips, almost unnaturally so. It pulsed with a faint energy, a thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate with the growing fear in my gut. We were ready. Or so we thought. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. My voice, when I spoke, sounded thin and reedy in the vast emptiness of the church. Invocatio Umbri, Aprite Portus. The Latin words felt strange on my tongue, ancient and powerful. Sarah's voice trembled at first, but she quickly found her confidence, her voice ringing out with an almost defiant edge. Mark, ever the skeptic, mumbled the words under his breath, his eyes darting nervously around the shadows. Only Emily remained silent, her gaze fixed on the ancient book, her lips moving soundlessly as if reciting a prayer. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. The temperature plummeted, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The chanting echoed around us, growing louder, more insistent. It felt like the very walls of the church were vibrating, resonating with the power we were invoking. I poured the dark liquid from the chalice into the center of the circle, where it pooled on the stone floor. The stench that rose from it was foul, like rotting flesh and sulfur. The obsidian, placed in the center of the pool, began to glow with an eerie, internal light. A sense of dread washed over me, cold and suffocating. I could feel eyes on us, watching from the darkness. Something was stirring, something ancient and malevolent. We had awakened something that should have remained undisturbed. We had made a terrible mistake. The obsidian exploded with a blinding flash of green light. I shielded my eyes, but it was too late. The image of that swirling, emerald vortex was burned into my retinas. When I could see again, the world had shifted. The church, it wasn't a church anymore. The walls pulsed and breathed, the stone melting and reforming into grotesque shapes. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and decay, and the floor beneath our feet felt unstable, as if the whole structure was about to collapse in on itself. Sarah screamed. I turned to see her cowering against the wall, her eyes fixed on something in the shadows. Something tall and skeletal, with eyes that burned like embers in the darkness. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, its limbs contorting at impossible angles. Mark was screaming too, his voice raw with panic. He'd fallen, his leg twisted beneath him at an unnatural angle. But it wasn't the fall that made him scream. It was the thing that emerged from the shadows behind him. A creature made of writhing tendrils, its form constantly shifting and changing, its touch leaving trails of burning flesh. And then there was Emily. She just stood there, a vacant smile on her face, her eyes glowing with an eerie green light. But it wasn't Emily anymore. Something else was speaking through her, something ancient and evil. Its voice slithered into our minds, whispering promises of power and oblivion. The ritual had gone horribly wrong. We had unleashed something truly monstrous, something beyond our comprehension. And now, we were trapped in a nightmare of our own making. We have to get out of here. I yelled, my voice barely audible above the din. But where could we go? The church, this thing it had become, was our prison. Sarah was fighting, clawing at the creature that had ensnared Mark. But it was no use. The thing was too strong, its grip tightening with every desperate struggle. Mark's screams were growing weaker, his face contorted in agony. I had to do something. Anything. I grabbed a splintered piece of wood from the floor, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all I had. I lunged, striking the creature with all my might. The wood splintered against its flesh, and it recoiled with a hiss of pain. But it wasn't enough. Mark's screams were fading, his eyes rolling back in his head. Foolish mortals. You dare to trespass in my domain. You will pay the price for your arrogance. Emily, or whatever was inhabiting her body, was levitating above the ground, her eyes burning with an unholy light. She spoke in a voice that wasn't her own, a voice that chilled me to the core. It was a voice that spoke of ancient power, of unimaginable cruelty. We were trapped. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The church, this twisted, nightmarish realm, had become our tomb. It's over. Somehow, we survived. Sarah and I. We escaped that nightmare. But we left them behind. Mark. Emily. Their faces haunt my dreams, their screams echo in my waking hours. I can't remember how we got out. It's all a blur of terror and confusion. One minute we were trapped in that hellish dimension, the next we were stumbling out into the cold night air, the ruined church looming behind us like a tombstone. We never spoke about what happened. What words could possibly describe the horrors we witnessed? The guilt, it eats away at me. It was my fault. My curiosity, my arrogance, led us to that place. It led to their deaths. Sarah, she's broken. The light has gone out of her eyes. We both carry the scars, invisible wounds that will never heal. We are forever marked by the darkness we unleashed. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the chanting, the screams, the whispers of the entity. I see the grotesque creatures, the twisted reality, the lifeless eyes of my friends. I will never be free from the guilt. The memory of that night will haunt me forever. But I will never forget the lesson I learned. Some doors are meant to remain closed. Some knowledge is forbidden. And some rituals should never be attempted. They say time heals all wounds. But I don't believe it. Some scars run too deep, some memories refuse to fade. The echoes of that night, the screams, the whispers, the grotesque visions, they still haunt me. I try to go on. To live a normal life. But the world seems different now. Darker. More sinister. I see shadows lurking in every corner, hear whispers in the wind. I know that the darkness we unleashed that night is still out there, waiting. Sometimes, I wonder if it's just a matter of time before it finds me again. Before it comes to collect its due. If you ever hear the whispers, the stories of forbidden knowledge, of rituals that grant power, don't listen. Turn away. Some doors are meant to remain closed. Some secrets are best left buried.